Hey guys, tonight we delve into the world of Greek mythology, but perhaps not the shiny, heroic version you're used to. We're peeling back the layers of legend to explore why one of its most infamous figures, Medusa, really needed a vacation. Imagine her, if you will, not just as a monster, but as a being utterly stressed out, dealing with a head full of complaining, venomous snakes, and a glare that, frankly, made social gatherings a nightmare. You think your bad hair days are tough? Trust me, you probably wouldn't survive Medusa's morning routine, let alone the constant stream of so-called heroes trying to redecorate their shields with your head. It's a lot. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It genuinely helps the channel, and lets me know you appreciate these little sleepy time explorations. And hey, while you're at it, feel free to post your location and local time in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see where everyone is drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your story doesn't begin in darkness or with the hiss of serpents. No, it starts with an almost painful normalcy, if such a thing can exist in the vibrant, God-bothered world of ancient Greece. You are a young woman, and by all accounts, strikingly beautiful. Your hair in particular is something of a marvel, long, lustrous, perhaps the color of polished bronze or the deepest raven's wing, catching the Aegean sun in a way that makes poets sigh and sculptors itch to capture its flow. You move with a natural grace, your reflection in the temple pool showing clear eyes and smooth skin, untouched by the harshness that will later define you. This beauty, in these early days, feels less like a power and more like, well, just you. A fact of your existence, like breathing. Sometimes it brings admiring glances, sometimes unwelcome attention, but mostly it's just the skin you inhabit. You live a life probably dedicated to the gods, perhaps in a coastal village where the scent of salt and wild thyme is always in the air. The days are marked by simple rhythms fetching water from the spring, the clack of the loom if you're weaving, the murmur of prayers in the local shrine. It's a life where the gods are an ever-present reality, their tempers and proclivities discussed with the same gravity as the coming olive harvest. You hear tales of their exploits, their loves, their colossal, world-shaking tantrums. They are distant, powerful, and best kept on their pedestals. Metaphorically speaking, little do you know, you're on a collision course with some of their biggest egos. The burden of your beauty, in this pre-monster phase, is subtle. Perhaps it means your mother fusses more, warding off unsuitable suitors with a ferocity that would make a Spartan warrior proud. Maybe other girls whisper, a mixture of envy and admiration that leaves you feeling a little isolated even in a crowd. It's not a terrible burden. Not yet. It's more like carrying a rare, delicate vase through a bustling marketplace. You're just a little more careful, a little more noticed than you might sometimes wish to be. You might find yourself longing for a quiet conversation that doesn't eventually circle back to your appearance, or for a moment where you can just blend into the background, unobserved. A very human desire, really. You might even serve in a local temple, perhaps one dedicated to a lesser deity, or even one of the big Olympians. Here, the routine is comforting, sweeping the cool marble floors, arranging offerings of barley cakes and wine, ensuring the sacred flame never dwindles. It's a structured existence, and the anonymity of service offers a certain peace. You see petitioners come and go, their faces etched with hope or fear, their whispered pleas rising with the incense smoke. The gods feel closer here, their presence almost palpable in the hushed sanctity of their dedicated spaces. A mainstream historical fact for you temples in ancient Greece were not just places of worship, but also often served as treasuries, public record offices, and even sanctuaries for those fleeing persecution. They were integral community hubs. In these quiet moments of service, you might idly polish a bronze tripod or straighten a fallen votive tablet, your thoughts your own. Perhaps you wonder about the wider world beyond your village, beyond the familiar curve of the bay. Tales of Athens, with its philosophers and Grand Parthenon, or Crete, with its labyrinthine palace, might filter through from traveling merchants. You have dreams, of course, simple human dreams that have nothing to do with petrification or serpentine coiffures. Maybe you dream of a loving family, a small olive grove of your own, a life untouched by divine melodrama. Ah, the irony. If only you had a patron god of minding one's own business. But alas, such a deity was tragically overlooked in the Olympian roster. You hear stories. Of course, cautionary tales about mortals who grew too proud, too beautiful, or who simply caught the wrong god's eye at the wrong time. Arachne turned into a spider for boasting of her weaving skills against Athena. Daphne transformed into a laurel tree to escape Apollo's pursuit. These are fireside stories, meant to instill a healthy fear and respect for the powers that be. You listen, a shiver running down your spine, but they feel like distant tragedies, things that happen to other people, in other places. You are careful, respectful, you offer your prayers and libations. Surely that's enough to keep you safe from such a terrible fate. One might call this youthful optimism, or perhaps just a fundamental misunderstanding of how incredibly petty and frankly bored the gods can sometimes be, especially when a shiny new mortal catches their attention. Historians still argue whether the intense focus on physical beauty in many Greek myths served as a straightforward celebration of aesthetics, or if it was a more complex commentary on its ephemeral and often dangerous nature for mortals, particularly women, in a world dominated by powerful, capricious deities. It's a conversation that echoes even now in our own beauty-obsessed cultures. For you, in these early days, it's less an academic debate and more a lived reality, a subtle undercurrent to your otherwise unremarkable existence. You're just trying to get through the week without accidentally offending a nymph or having a satyr follow you home. It's a surprisingly relatable struggle, minus the satyr part for most of us. Hopefully. Remember this feeling of simple, unadorned humanity. It will be a stark contrast to what comes next. This quiet life, with its small joys and gentle routines, is the before picture you'll desperately wish you could return to. Like wishing you hadn't updated your phone right before a big trip, only with slightly more dire consequences. Your path, perhaps guided by your family's wishes or a perceived calling, leads you into more dedicated service. You find yourself as a priestess, or at least an attendant, in a temple of Athena. Yes, that Athena, goddess of wisdom, warfare, crafts, and a deity known for her fierce patronage of heroes and her equally fierce defense of her own domains and dignity. It's a prestigious position, one that commands respect. You are now closer to the divine, serving in one of the grander, more recognized sanctuaries dedicated to the gray-eyed goddess. The work is more demanding, the rituals more elaborate, the expectations higher. You trade the scent of village time for the cool, incense-laden air of polished stone and ancient bronze. The temple itself is an imposing structure. Imagine towering Doric columns, their stark white marble gleaming in the Mediterranean sun, perhaps painted in vibrant colors as many ancient temples were, a detail we often forget, preferring our ruins in distinguished monochrome. The cella, the inner sanctum, houses a magnificent statue of Athena, her sculpted eyes seeming to follow your every move as you go about your duties. It's all very awe-inspiring, designed to make mortals feel small and reverent, and honestly, it does a pretty good job. You learn the intricate litanies, the specific gestures for each offering, the sacred calendar of festivals and holy days. Your life becomes a tapestry woven with threads of devotion and duty. You take pride in your role. There's a certain serenity in the meticulous performance of ancient rites, a connection to something larger than yourself. You are one of a sisterhood of priestesses, women dedicated to the virgin goddess. There's a camaraderie, perhaps shared whispers in the cloistered courtyards after the petitioners have departed, hushed discussions about omens and portents. You learn about Athena's symbols, the owl, wise and watchful, the olive tree, her gift to Athens. You strive to embody the virtues she represents: wisdom, discipline, a certain thoughtful composure. You're good at it. Maybe a little too good, drawing favorable notice from senior priestesses, which, in any hierarchical structure can be both a blessing and a curse. Remember that particularly scratchy chiton you had to wear for high festivals, the price of piety, you suppose? Yet, even within these sacred and supposedly serene walls, the whispers of the Olympian soap opera find their way in. Tales of Zeus and his latest amorous escapade, Hera's subsequent incandescent rage, Poseidon's grumblings from the sea, Apollo's artistic temperament flaring up. The gods, like it seems, are never truly quiet. Their dramas provide endless fodder for speculation and gossip, even among those sworn to their service. You hear of heroes favored by Athena, their quests and triumphs, and you feel a vicarious thrill, a sense of connection to the wider, more exciting world. You probably don't imagine that one day, heroes will be seeking you out, and not for helpful advice or a blessing. A quirky tidbit for you: some ancient Greek temples employed sacred animals. For instance, the Temple of Apollo at Delphi famously had its python, and other sanctuaries might have had sacred snakes or birds. Whether Athena's temples commonly housed live owls is less clear, but the association was incredibly strong. Imagine trying to keep a straight face during a solemn ritual while a grumpy owl is molting in the rafters. Adds a certain something to the divine atmosphere. The routine of temple life is, for the most part, predictable. The dawn prayers, the cleansing rituals, the receiving of offerings, everything from simple clay votives to elaborate bronze dedications. You assist in interpreting omens, perhaps from the flight of birds or the patterns in sacrificial smoke. Historians still argue whether the role of priestesses in major cults like Athena's afforded women genuine societal power and autonomy, or if they were largely symbolic figures, still operating within a deeply patriarchal structure. It's a complex question, and your own lived experience within the temple walls would likely be a mix of solemn responsibility and subtle constraints. You are still beautiful, of course, and your striking looks, which once set you apart in your village, now draw attention within the hallowed confines of Athena's sanctuary. Perhaps this is where the trouble truly begins to brew, not as a sudden storm, but as a slow gathering of clouds on a distant horizon. Divine attention is a double-edged sword, and Athena, while a powerful protector, is also a deity with a very specific and very jealous sense of propriety regarding her sacred spaces and her attendants. Your beauty, combined with your devout service, might be seen by some as an asset to the temple, drawing more worshippers, more prestige, but it might also attract the wrong kind of notice. There are moments of unease, perhaps a certain intensity in the gaze of a visiting dignitary, a whispered comment from a fellow priestess that lingers a little too long in your mind. The temple, while a sanctuary, is not entirely cut off from the world, and the world is full of, well, human desires and divine whims. You might find yourself practicing a kind of careful invisibility, trying not to shine too brightly, even as your duties require you to be a visible representative of the goddess. It's a delicate balancing act, like trying to carry a full amphora of wine on a tightrope, while also reciting Homeric hymns backwards. You hear stories of Athena's own formidable nature. Her birth, fully formed and armored, from the head of Zeus, her unwavering virginity, a core aspect of her divine identity. Her demand for purity and devotion from her followers is absolute. This you understand and respect. You are dedicated, you are pure, you are safe within her temple, under her protection, or so you believe. The early signs that this belief might be optimistic are subtle. A tremor in the earth that feels a little too deliberate, a sudden chill in the air on a warm day, a dream that leaves you unsettled, filled with images of churning seas and a powerful, demanding presence. You dismiss them as nerves, as the overactive imagination of a young woman living a cloistered life. You could not be more wrong. The gods are stirring, and unfortunately for you, your file seems to have landed on a particularly troublesome celestial desk. That feeling of being watched, it's about to get a lot more specific, and a whole lot less comfortable. The sanctity of Athena's temple, your place of service and supposed refuge, becomes the stage for an event that will irrevocably shatter your life. It's a day like any other, perhaps. The sun streams through the high, clear-story windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the still air, the scent of old stone, beeswax polish, and dried herbs offered in prayer hangs heavy. You are performing your duties, perhaps alone in a quieter part of the sanctuary, a secluded chamber or a less frequented courtyard where you're tending to a sacred olive tree or cataloging recent offerings. That sense of peace you've cultivated, that careful composure is about to be violated in the most brutal way. He arrives not with a thunderclap or a grand announcement, but with the unnerving suddenness that gods can command. Poseidon, Earthshaker, Stormbringer, god of the sea, horses and earthquakes. Brother to Zeus and Hades, an Olympian of immense power and equally immense ego, often depicted with his trident, a beard like crashing foam, and a notoriously short temper. He has noticed you. Your beauty, which has been a source of quiet admiration and perhaps minor social inconvenience, has now attracted the predatory gaze of one of the most formidable and frankly entitled deities in the pantheon. You might feel it first as a change in the atmosphere, a sudden damp chill, the faint, unmistakable smell of brine and the deep ocean in a place where it absolutely does not belong. The ground might tremble slightly, a subtle pre-shock that only someone attuned to the Earth's moods, or someone about to have a very bad day courtesy of the Earthshaker, might register. Then, he is there. Perhaps he doesn't even bother with a charming disguise. No swan or bull or golden shower nonsense like his brother Zeus. He appears in his divine might, radiating an aura of power that is both terrifying and overwhelming. The encounter, as most ancient sources discreetly put it, is a violation or a seduction. But let's be clear. In the context of a mortal priestess in a sacred temple confronted by a powerful god known for taking what he wants, the power imbalance is so extreme that consent is a meaningless concept. He desires you, and he acts on that desire, there in the sacred space of his niece. Athena, this isn't a romance, this is an assault. The specifics are horrifying and best left to the shadows of your memory. But the terror, the confusion, the feeling of utter powerlessness will be seared into your soul. The sanctity of the temple offers you no protection from another god's lust. It's a horrifying realization that God's rules apply to mortals, but not always to each other. Imagine the desperate, silent pleas to Athena that scream through your mind. Your temple. Your priestess, protect me. But the goddess, for whatever reason, perhaps she is otherwise engaged, perhaps divine politics prevent her direct intervention against her powerful uncle, or perhaps, as later events will suggest, her priorities are horrifyingly skewed, does not appear. You are alone with the raging god of the sea, and the encounter leaves you shattered, defiled, your vows and your very being desecrated within the holy ground you swore to uphold. It's the ultimate betrayal, not just by Poseidon, but by the very concept of divine justice and protection you've dedicated your life to after he is gone, as suddenly as he arrived, leaving behind only the lingering scent of the ocean and a profound, echoing silence. You are left in the ruins of your former self. The cool marble floor feels like ice beneath you. The familiar statues and sacred objects now seem alien, mocking. The sunlight streaming in feels harsh, accusatory. The carefully constructed order of your life has been demolished. Shame, fear, and a desperate, aching anger flood through you. You are a victim of a powerful deity's whim, a pawn in their incomprehensible games. You might try to pull yourself together, to smooth your torn robes, to erase the evidence of what has happened. But some violations cannot be hidden. The trauma is a brand, invisible to others perhaps, but burning within you. What do you do? Who do you turn to? The other priestesses. How could you explain the temple authorities? Would they believe you or blame you? The fear of not being believed, or worse, of being held responsible for a god's transgression, is a heavy stone in your chest. Remember those hushed whispers about other mortals who suffered at the hands of gods? You are now one of them. And if you thought that was bad, you haven't yet experienced divine female fury. A rather stark mainstream historical fact in ancient Greek society. The legal standing of women was limited, and avenues for seeking justice, especially against powerful men, let alone gods, were virtually non-existent. The blame for such encounters often fell upon the woman. This societal context makes your situation even more terrifyingly hopeless. You are trapped. The immediate aftermath is a blur of shock and dawning horror. You try to continue your duties, but the temple, once a place of solace, now feels like a tomb. Every shadow seems to hold a threat. Every distant sound makes you jump. The sacred flame you so diligently tended now seems to offer no warmth, no comfort. You feel tainted, broken, and you are acutely aware that this transgression occurred in Athena's sacred space. The goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare is not known for her forgiving nature when it comes to the defilement of her sanctuaries or the breaking of vows by her priestesses. Regardless of the circumstances, historians still argue about the complex relationship between Athena and Poseidon, who were frequent rivals, most famously in their contest for the patronage of Athens. Some scholars suggest that Poseidon's actions in Athena's temple could be interpreted as a deliberate act of provocation against his niece, with you as the unfortunate collateral damage. It's a cold comfort, to be sure, to think of yourself as a mere pawn in a divine power struggle. You scrub your skin raw, as if you could wash away the memory, the touch, but it's a stain on your soul. A quirky, though grim, tidbit from mythology gods often left some sort of mark or offspring from their encounters with mortals. You pray with a new and desperate fervor that this is not the case. But your most immediate fear is not of Poseidon's lingering influence, but of Athena's inevitable discovery. You know her reputation. She is wise, yes, but her wisdom is often severe, her justice swift and unyielding, and you, her priestess, have been at the center of a desecration within her holiest of holies. You begin to understand that your suffering might have only just begun. The vacation you don't even know you need yet is looking more and more like a desperate necessity rather than a pleasant fantasy. You just wanted to arrange some flowers and chant some hymns, and now you're embroiled in Olympian-level HR disasters. Honestly, that the paperwork alone must be a nightmare. The reckoning is not long in coming. Athena, goddess of the strategic mind, the all-seeing eye, the one who famously doesn't miss a trick, especially when it involves her own honor or property, becomes aware of what transpired in her temple. Perhaps a telltale shift in the sanctuary's sacred aura, a distressed nymph whispering the news, or simply her divine intuition alerts her that something is deeply amiss. And when Athena investigates, she gets answers. She learns of Poseidon's violation, his utter contempt for her sacred space, and for you, her priestess. You might be summoned before her, or she might simply appear, a terrifying, incandescent figure radiating cold fury. Imagine her statue, the one you so diligently tended, seeming to animate. Its marble eyes now chips of ice, its serene expression hardened into a mask of implacable wrath. There's no gentle inquiry, no victim support counseling from the goddess of wisdom. Her reaction is not one of sympathy for your plight, for the trauma you endured. Instead, her outrage focuses on the defilement of her temple and, by extension, the breaking of your vows of purity. However unwillingly, it's a divine HR policy with absolutely no room for nuance or, apparently, compassion. This is where the narrative of your victimhood gets cruelly twisted. Instead of directing her primary fury at her powerful uncle Poseidon, who was, let's face it, the actual perpetrator, and a peer she could directly confront, though divine politics are always messy, Athena turns her vengeful power upon you. The logic, if one can call it that, is brutal. You were the vessel through which her temple was desecrated. You are where the blame, and therefore the punishment, will land. It's a classic case of shooting the messenger, or in this case, horrifically transforming the victim to make a terrifying example, because, reasons. Divine, deeply problematic reasons. The transformation is not instantaneous. A magical poof. It's described as a curse, a divine alteration born of rage. It begins, perhaps, with your beautiful hair, the hair that may have first caught Poseidon's eye, the hair that cascaded around you in your service to the virgin goddess. You feel a strange, slithering sensation on your scalp, an itching, a writhing. You reach up, your fingers encountering not soft strands, but cool, smooth, coiling forms. With dawning horror, you realize your locks are thickening, twisting, becoming sentient. Snakes, living. Hissing serpents now sprout from your head, their tiny, flickering tongues tasting the air, their lidless eyes glinting with malevolent light. This isn't just a bad hair day, this is a follicular nightmare of epic proportions. Remember when you worried about split ends? Simpler times. But Athena's cruel creativity doesn't stop there. Your very gaze, the way you see the world and the way it sees you, is warped. Your eyes, once clear and reflective of your gentle nature, become something terrible. A power, cold and dreadful, begins to emanate from them. The first time you realize its full extent is likely accidental and horrifying. Perhaps a fellow priestess, rushing to see what the commotion is, meets your terrified, snake-crowned gaze. Her cry is cut short as her form stiffens, her vibrant life force ebbing away, her skin paling and hardening into a sickly gray. She becomes stone, a statue frozen in an attitude of shock, a permanent, terrible testament to your new curse. The realization hits you with the force of a physical blow. You can no longer look upon another living being without destroying them. Your skin, too, might change. Some accounts give the Gorgon's scales, a tough reptilian hide, further stripping away your humanity. Your hands, once gentle, might become clawed. Wings, great bronze or golden wings, are sometimes described as sprouting from your back, though whether these offer true flight or are merely another monstrous adornment is debatable. The overall effect is to transform you from a beautiful young woman into a figure of ultimate terror, a being whose very appearance is a weapon. A mainstream historical fact, Athena was known as Athena Primakos, the one who fights in the front, a warrior goddess. Her punishments often reflected a harsh, martial sense of justice, transforming offenders into warnings or instruments of her displeasure. Your transformation is, in a twisted way, a reflection of her own formidable, terrifying aspect. The other priestesses, your companions, react with predictable terror. Their screams echo through the temple as they flee from your presence, their faces masks of horror. There is no comfort, no understanding, only revulsion and fear. You are utterly alone, a monster even to those who knew you, who prayed alongside you. Athena might deliver a parting speech, a divine condemnation filled with righteous fury, explaining that your hideous new form will serve as a warning to all who would dare defile her sacred spaces or tempt the gods. She frames it as justice, but it feels like the cruelest, most disproportionate punishment imaginable. You've gone from temple attendant to public menace number one in what feels like an afternoon. Talk about a rough performance review. Historians still argue whether the figure of Medusa, and the Gorgons generally, represented primal female power, a terrifying aspect of the divine feminine that patriarchal Greek society sought to control and demonize, or if they were more straightforwardly chthonic monsters embodying ancient fears of death and the unknown. Your personal experience doesn't leave much room for academic nuance at this point. You're too busy trying not to accidentally petrify your own foot when you look down. A quirky tidbit concerning divine transformations. Ovid's Metamorphoses is a veritable catalog of such transformations, where gods frequently change mortals into animals, plants, or monsters as punishment or reward, showcasing a worldview where the boundaries between forms were considered remarkably fluid, especially under divine influence. You've just received the deluxe punishment package. The temple, once your sanctuary, is now a place of horror, tainted by your cursed presence. You know you cannot stay. Athena's wrathful makeover is complete. You are Medusa, the Gorgon, a name that will become synonymous with terror. The vacation you so desperately need is no longer a whimsical thought, but a survival imperative. Though finding a travel agent who caters to snake-haired women with a petrifying gaze is going to be, to put it mildly, challenging. The journey from beautiful priestess to feared monster is a swift and brutal one, leaving you to grapple with a reality more terrifying than any myth you'd ever heard whispered by the temple fires. The immediate aftermath of Athena's curse is a maelstrom of confusion, terror, and a profound, disorienting grief. You catch your reflection, perhaps in a polished bronze shield left leaning against a temple wall. or in a still pool of water in the temple courtyard, and the image that stares back is a grotesque parody of your former self. Gone are the soft curves of your face, the gentle light in your eyes, the flowing locks of hair you once took such simple pride in. In their place is a visage framed by a writhing mass of angry, hissing snakes, their tiny forked tongues darting in and out, their eyes like chips of obsidian. Your own eyes, when you dare to meet their reflection, hold a new, terrible power, a coldness that chills you to the bone. This is your new reality. No takebacks, no exchange policy with the divine. The first undeniable confirmation of your petrifying gaze seals your fate. That poor priestess, your former companion, now stands as a silent, gray sentinel, a permanent fixture of horror in the once sacred space. Her stone eyes stare blankly, her mouth frozen in a silent scream. The weight of that accidental act of destruction is crushing. It wasn't intentional. You didn't want to harm her, but your curse doesn't care about intent. It simply is. The realization that you are a walking weapon, a being who can extinguish life with a mere look, is horrifying. You quickly learn to avert your gaze, to look at the ground. At your hands, are they clawed now, or still human? Accounts vary, but either way, they feel alien. Anywhere but at another living thing. Panic sets in. The temple, your home and sanctuary is now a trap. The screams of the other priestesses as they fled from you still echo in your ears. You are a pariah, an abomination. Every instinct screams at you to run, to hide, to get away from this place that has become the scene of your desecration and your monstrous transformation. You stumble out of the temple complex, your new snake hair surprisingly heavy, the hissing a constant, unsettling chorus in your ears. Do they whisper to you? Do they have their own little personalities? It's a terrifyingly absurd thought that flits through your mind. Perhaps one is particularly prone to complaining about the draft. As you move through the areas surrounding the temple, perhaps a bustling agora or residential streets, your appearance causes instant chaos. People scream, point, and scramble to get away. Market stalls are overturned, pottery shatters, animals bolt in terror. Anyone unfortunate enough to meet your panicked, unshielded gaze for even a moment, a curious child, a startled merchant, a brave or foolish city guard, stiffens, pales, and becomes another lifeless statue in your horrifying wake. Each accidental petrification is another stab of guilt, another layer of monstrosity settling upon you. You are leaving a trail of unintentional destruction, and the growing cacophony of screams and shouts only fuels your desperate need to escape. This isn't like accidentally setting off the fire alarm. This is turning the whole city into a very creepy sculpture garden against your will. You learn, through painful trial and error, the terrible mechanics of your curse. Does it require direct eye contact? How long must the gaze hold? Can you control it, even slightly? The myths are often vague on these operational details, but for you, it's a terrifyingly practical problem. You probably try closing your eyes, but then how do you navigate peeking through your lashes is clearly not an option. Perhaps you resort to keeping your head bowed, your vision fixed on your own feet, the ground rushing by beneath you. It's a clumsy, humiliating way to move, but it's better than leaving a trail of stoned citizens. Remember how you once glided gracefully. Now you just try not to trip over your own despair while also not committing accidental mass petrification. The psychological toll is immediate and immense. The beautiful young woman you were is gone, replaced by this thing. The grief for your lost self is a raw, open wound. The loneliness is a crushing weight. You are utterly, terrifyingly alone. Not just physically, but existentially. Who could understand? Who would even try? You are a monster, not by choice, but by divine decree. A mainstream historical fact in ancient Greek thought. Monsters often occupied liminal spaces, the wild, untamed edges of the known world, representing chaos and a threat to the civilized order. You are being physically and psychologically pushed towards these fringes. You need to find shelter, a place where you can hide, where you won't inadvertently harm anyone else. The wilderness calls, the unpopulated regions far from human settlements. The journey is likely fraught with peril, not just from your own cursed state, but from the natural dangers of the ancient world. Wild animals, harsh terrain, unpredictable weather. And all the while, your serpentine crown hisses its discordant symphony, a constant reminder of what you've become. Do the snakes get tangled? Do they argue amongst themselves for the best sunning spot on your head? These are the deeply unheroic, deeply troubling questions that now constitute your internal monologue. A quirky or fringe tidbit regarding Gorgons, while Medusa is the most famous. She was often said to have two immortal sisters, Stheno strong and Euryale far-roaming, or wide-leaping. Unlike you, they were supposedly born as Gorgons, immortal and monstrous from the start. The question of when and how you meet them, or if they were always a distant, monstrous part of your extended family tree that you now tragically resemble, is something the myths don't always clarify. Imagine that family reunion. Oh, you're a Gorgon now. Welcome to the club. Try the ambrosia. It's dreadful this eon. Historians still argue whether the proliferation of female monsters in Greek mythology, Scylla, Charybdis, the Sirens, the Sphinx, Lamia, the Harpies, and you, Medusa reflects a deep-seated societal fear of female power and sexuality, or if these figures served more complex roles as embodiments of natural dangers, moral warnings, or even as remnants of older, supplanted goddesses from pre-Hellenic cultures. Whatever the academic interpretation, you're currently living the nightmare, not deconstructing it for a thesis. You just want to find a dark, quiet hole to crawl into and maybe, just maybe, figure out how to condition your snake hair so it doesn't shed all over your new evil lair. The practicalities of being a monster are often overlooked in the epic poems. You're starting to think a vacation isn't just needed. It's a fundamental human. Well, ex-human, right? The desperate flight from civilization, from the scenes of your accidental horror, eventually leads you to the remote, forsaken corners of the world. You are seeking not just shelter, but isolation so profound that your curse can harm no one else. The myths are vague on your exact timeshare location, placing your lair variously in the far west, near the Oceanus, or in Libya, places that to the ancient Greeks represented the mysterious, uncharted edges of their known world. Essentially, you're looking for the mythological equivalent of the middle of nowhere, a place so undesirable that even the most desperate goat herder wouldn't stumble upon it. And, crucially, it needs to have really bad cell reception for any would-be heroes trying to Google map your address. Imagine the journey. Days, perhaps weeks, of travel, always keeping your gaze averted, your head bowed. You move under the cloak of darkness when possible. The moon your only companion, its silvery light making your scaled skin, if you have it, gleam faintly. The snakes on your head are a constant, restless weight. They're hissing a soundtrack to your misery. Do they offer directions? Turn left at that spooky dead tree, mistress? Probably not helpful. You cross barren landscapes, thorny scrubland, wind-swept plains where the silence is broken only by the howl of the wind and the skittering of unseen creatures. Your once priestess robes are tattered. Your feet, if still human, are bruised and bleeding. If you now have talons, well, that's a whole other set of podiatric challenges. Finally, you find it a cave, perhaps set into the side of a desolate mountain, its entrance shrouded by thorny bushes and weather-beaten rocks. Or maybe it's a crumbling, forgotten ruin from an even more ancient time, its stones already whispering tales of forgotten gods and sorrows. The key criteria are remoteness and defensibility, or at least a distinct lack of anything that might attract visitors. No charming sea views, no convenient local amenities. This isn't a fixer-upper, this is a condemn it and run away screaming kind of property. Perfect. The first task is making it your own, such as it is. This isn't about interior decoration, no charming tapestries or artfully arranged amphorae for you anymore. This is about basic survival and containment. You explore the depths of your new lair, the darkness a strange kind of comfort now. Here, at least, you don't have to worry about accidentally turning a passing shepherd into a garden gnome. The cave might be damp, cold, echoing with the drip of water and the scuttling of unseen cave dwellers. Spiders, bats, things that thankfully don't seem to mind your serpentine roommates or your deadly gaze. Perhaps they're just naturally gloomy. You clear a space to rest, a pile of dry leaves, or bracken in a sheltered alcove. The concept of a comfortable bed is a distant memory. Your former life, with its soft linens and quiet routines in Athena's temple, feels like a dream from another existence. Here, survival is paramount. You need to ensure there's a source of water, however meager, a seep in the rock, a hidden spring. Food will be another challenge, a terrifying one we'll get to later. For now, it's about securing this miserable patch of earth as your own. Remember how you used to meticulously arrange offerings on an altar? Now you're just trying to find a rock that's slightly less lumpy to sit on. The glamour of being a mythological monster is, you're discovering, vastly overrated. If your Gorgon sisters, Stheno and Euryale, are part of your story now, this is likely where you join them, or they find you. Imagine their reaction to their newly monstrous sibling. Are they welcoming, in their own terrifying way? Oh good, another one. We were running low on existential dread. Or is there a pecking order? A sisterly rivalry even among beings of such profound horror? Living with immortal, already monstrous sisters adds another layer of complexity to your already nightmarish existence. They've had eternity to get used to their state. You're still reeling from the shock. A quirky tidbit from some obscure myth variations suggests that Gorgons might have had a particular diet or needed specific environmental conditions, which could explain their choice of lair. Perhaps they were connoisseurs of particularly gloomy atmospheres, or maybe certain rock formations helped with snake hair acoustics. The area around your cave becomes a kind of dead zone. Any creature, animal, or human, foolish enough to wander too close and catch your eye is instantly petrified. Over time, the approaches to your lair might become littered with these stone figures. A deer frozen mid-leap, a wolf snarling silently at the sky, perhaps even a few over-curious or aggressive humans who didn't heed the local legends that would inevitably spring up about the terrifying creature in the western gloom. These statues are not trophies, they are grim warnings, markers of your curse and constant reminders of your destructive power. They make for terrible garden ornaments, by the way, very judgmental, always staring. A mainstream historical fact, the ancient Greeks often associated remote, wild landscapes with the presence of chthonic deities, spirits, and monsters. Caves, in particular, were frequently seen as entrances to the underworld or homes for beings outside the Olympian order. Your choice of a cave lair fits perfectly within this cosmological understanding of the world, placing you firmly in the realm of the other. Historians still argue whether the consistent portrayal of monsters' lairs as dark, remote, and dangerous places in mythology served primarily to create narrative tension and thrill, or if it reflected deeper societal anxieties about the unknown and the untamed wilderness that lay beyond the cultivated, civilized spaces of the polis. For you, it's less about narrative tension and more about practical necessity. You need a place where you can be Medusa without constantly having to apologize for turning the local wildlife into landscape features. It's a lonely existence, this housekeeping for the damned. You might even find yourself missing the mundane chores of the temple, the sweeping and polishing. At least then, your cleaning efforts didn't run the risk of creating more statues. The sheer tedium of your new life, punctuated by moments of accidental petrification, is already making you yearn for that vacation. A nice, quiet beach where the only things turning to stone are the ones that are supposed to be stone. Now that you've found your remote and likely quite drafty new home, the mundane realities of your cursed existence begin to assert themselves. And high on that list of deeply unglamorous problems is your hair, or rather, your head snakes. Those writhing, hissing, venomous companions are not just a terrifying fashion statement. They are a constant, active presence, requiring a level of maintenance that would make even the most dedicated beauty influencer weep. This isn't a wash-and-go situation. This is wake up and try not to get envenomated by your own bangs situation. Imagine waking up in your cold, dark cave. The first sensation, even before you open your carefully averted eyes, is the movement on your scalp. The snakes are awake too, perhaps stirring for their own mysterious serpentine reasons. Or maybe just because they're cold and grumpy, their scales rasp against each other, a sound like dry leaves skittering across stone. Their little forked tongues are probably flicking out, tasting the stale cave air. Do they get bedhead or perhaps cavehead? Do they shed their skins? The thought of finding tiny snake skins all over your already miserable living space is just another layer of awful. Remember complaining about a few loose hairs in the shower drain? You'd trade that in a heartbeat for your current predicament. Feeding them is likely a concern. Are they part of you, sustained by your own life force, or do they need their own sustenance? The myths are, as usual, unhelpfully vague on Gorgon hair care specifics. If they do need feeding, what do they eat? Tiny cave insects? Do you have to hunt for miniature snake snacks? The logistics are a nightmare. Sorry, Timmy the Asp. Only one cave cricket for you today. Rations are tight. The sheer absurdity of it is enough to make you want to just shave it all off. But you suspect that would only make them angrier. And an angry, bald but still somehow snake-infested head is probably not an improvement. Then there's the hygiene aspect. Yeah, how do you wash a head full of snakes? Do you dunk your whole head in a cold subterranean pool, hoping they don't all try to escape or, worse, enjoy it and start demanding regular spa days? What about tangles? If your human hair got knotted, it was an annoyance. If a dozen venomous snakes get themselves into a reptilian Gordian knot on top of your skull, that's a genuine crisis. Stheno uriale. Anyone got a wide-toothed comb and a lot of courage. You can imagine your immortal sisters just rolling their ancient eyes. Figure it out, newbie. We've been dealing with this for millennia. And the hissing? Oh, the constant, low-level hissing. It's your new background music, the soundtrack to your solitary existence. Sometimes it might rise in agitation. Perhaps if a bat flies too close or if they're arguing over prime head real estate. Sometimes it might be a softer, almost sleepy susurrus, but it's always there. A perpetual sibilant reminder of Athena's curse. It would be enough to drive anyone mad. You probably find yourself talking to them, if only to break the monotony. All right, vipers, settle down. Yes, I know it's damp. It's a cave. What did you expect? The looks they give you if snakes could look exasperated. A quirky or fringe tidbit for you in some ancient cultures. Snakes were associated not just with danger and poison, but also with healing, rebirth due to shedding their skin, and prophecy. The staff of Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine, features a single serpent, and the caduceus of Hermes has two. It's a bitter irony that your snakes, a symbol of your curse and monstrosity, carry this echo of sanctity and healing that is now utterly denied to you. Your snakes are strictly on the terror and doom end of the symbolic spectrum. No one's asking you for medical advice, that's for sure. Unless the advice is how to become a statue really quickly? The sheer weight of them must be a literal pain in the neck, even if they're small. A multitude of active muscular reptiles attached to your scalp would be a constant strain. Headaches must be a frequent companion. You probably spend a lot of time massaging your temples, if you can reach them without upsetting the more territorial members of your cranial menagerie. And what if one of them gets an itch? Do they scratch it on a stalactite? The practical, everyday annoyances of being Medusa are legion, and entirely uncelebrated in the heroic epics. Perseus didn't have to deal with snake dandruff, did he? No. He just got to show up for the dramatic final scene. Historians still argue whether the specific imagery of snake hair for Medusa was intended to evoke primal fear of reptiles, common in many cultures, or if it had a more specific symbolic link to chthonic deities, underworld spirits, or even to ancient Near Eastern figures that sometimes featured serpentine attributes. For you, it's less about the deep symbolic resonance and more about the very real problem of one of them. Let's call him Slithers, constantly trying to look over your shoulder when you're trying to, well, do anything at all. Personal space is clearly not a concept your new hair understands. The venom is another delightful feature. Are they constantly dripping poison? Do you have to be careful not to accidentally poison yourself if one of them nips your ear in a fit of pique? Bad viper. No biting the landlady. The thought of trying to sleep with a pillow full of venomous, restless snakes just inches from your face is enough to give anyone insomnia. Perhaps this is why you always look so terrifying in the statues and Vos paintings. It's not just the curse, it's chronic sleep deprivation and extreme hair-related stress. You are, quite literally, having endless bad hair days, each one more trying than the last. That vacation to a deserted island snake-free ideally is sounding better and better. Maybe a nice, simple buzz cut is on the post-vacation vision board. If only. A mainstream historical fact to consider is the ancient Greek understanding of venom and poison. While they had empirical knowledge of poisonous plants and animals, the mythological understanding often imbued these substances with magical or divine properties. Your snake's venom isn't just a biological toxin, it's a manifestation of your divine curse, making it all the more potent and terrifying. You're basically a walking Superfund site with really, really bad hair, and the idea of finding a good stylist in your current remote locale, utterly impossible. They'd take one look and declare it a lost cause, assuming they didn't become a permanent part of your cave decor first. Beyond the constant annoyance of your serpentine hairdo, an even more pressing and existentially dreadful problem looms: food. What does a Gorgon eat, especially one whose gaze turns most potential meals into highly detailed, inedible statues? This isn't a simple matter of popping down to the local agora for some olives and a nice piece of grilled fish. Your dietary options have become, to put it mildly, severely restricted. You're on the ultimate involuntary don't look at your food diet. Remember your former life, the simple pleasures of fresh bread, goat cheese, ripe figs, the taste of wine shared with fellow priestesses. Those days are long gone. Now, the very act of acquiring sustenance is fraught with peril, mostly for the sustenance. Imagine the frustration. You're hungry. You spot a plump, unsuspecting rabbit nibbling on some sparse desert grasses. Your hunting instincts, perhaps newly sharpened by your monstrous transformation, kick in. You try to approach carefully, averting your gaze as much as possible, but it's nearly impossible. A fleeting glimpse, an accidental flicker of eye contact as the rabbit looks up. Startled, and poof, instant garden ornament. Another beautiful, lifelike, and entirely unappetizing stone bunny to add to your collection. The area around your lair must be littered with these culinary tragedies, a still life of perpetual hunger. So, what are your options? Do you learn to hunt completely blind, relying on sound and smell alone? That's a skill that would take immense practice, and the margin for error is, well, stony. You might try to trap animals, setting snares or pitfalls, but then you have the problem of retrieving your catch without looking at it. Perhaps you send one of your more cooperative head snakes to investigate the trap, hoping it can give you a non-visual all clear or dinner's ready signal. Okay, Hissy Elliot, is it a boar or just another rock that looks vaguely boar-shaped? The communication challenges alone are immense. Do Gorgons even need to eat as mortals do? Your sisters, Stheno and Euryale, are immortal. Perhaps their dietary needs are different or non-existent, but you, Medusa, were once mortal. Does the curse that made you a monster also sustain you? Like some terrible perpetual motion machine powered by divine wrath and bad hair. The myths don't offer a Gorgon food pyramid. Unfortunately, this ambiguity is just another layer of your daily torment. Are those hunger pangs real? Or just a phantom sensation? A cruel echo of your lost humanity? Some interpretations suggest Gorgons might have had a taste for human flesh. This, of course, adds another horrifying dimension to your existence. If this is true, then the heroes and unfortunate wanderers who approach your lair aren't just threats. They're potential, if deeply problematic, meals. But even then, the logistics are a nightmare. How do you subdue a struggling human without making eye contact? Do you rely on your brute strength? Your claws? Your snake hair's venomous bites? It's a gruesome thought, and one that further cements your status as a figure of terror. And honestly, the idea of trying to butcher a meal that could turn you to stone if you accidentally looked at its reflection in your knife is just peak workplace hazard. You'd need a very specialized set of kitchen tools and probably a blindfold. which doesn't seem conducive to fine culinary work. A quirky tidbit, ancient magical texts and Deficciones curse tablets sometimes invoked fearsome mythological figures, including gorgons, to lend power to their spells or to ward off evil. It's a strange thought that while you're struggling to figure out lunch, your image is being used by some distant sorcerer to curse their neighbor's olive harvest or protect a tomb. Your brand is strong, even if your stomach is empty. Perhaps you learn to subsist on things that are already dead, carrion found in the desolate landscape around your cave. Or maybe you can eat plants, roots, and berries, assuming you can identify the non-poisonous ones without accidentally petrifying the entire bush while checking for ripeness. Is this a delicious berry, or has it just been staring at me too intently? It's a constant state of uncertainty. The simple act of eating, once a source of pleasure and community, is now a solitary, frustrating, and potentially dangerous ordeal. You probably long for a simple bowl of lentil soup, something that definitely won't make eye contact. A mainstream historical fact, the ancient Greek diet was largely based on the Mediterranean triad of cereals like barley and wheat, olives and olive oil, and wine. Meat and fish were consumed, but perhaps less frequently by the general populace than by the wealthy. Your current dietary restrictions put you far outside even the most basic ancient Greek nutritional guidelines. You're inventing a whole new food group, things that were alive a second ago but are now decorative. Historians still argue about the precise nature of Medusa's monstrosity. Was she a predator? A guardian? Or simply a cursed victim whose danger was passive yet absolute? These interpretations significantly affect how one might imagine her daily life, including her means of sustenance. If she's a reluctant monster, the quest for food becomes a tragic farce. If she's embraced her new nature, it's a terrifying hunt. Given your backstory, the tragic farce option seems more likely. Adding another layer of misery to your existence? You didn't ask for this. You didn't ask to be a walking, talking, or hissing lithification device. You might even try to reason with your food. Look, little mountain goat, I'm having a really bad millennium. If you could just hop into this conveniently placed sack without either of us making eye contact, that would be super helpful. Unsurprisingly, this strategy is unlikely to yield positive results. Animals are notoriously uncooperative when faced with a hissing, snake-haired creature trying to give them complex instructions. The frustration of it all, the constant hunger, or the disgusting alternatives, is just one more reason why a long and relaxing vacation, perhaps at an all-inclusive resort with a strictly no petrification policy and a buffet that stays safely inanimate, is at the very top of your wish list. You dream of a world where looking at your lunch doesn't turn it into a permanent exhibit. Your remote lair, chosen for its splendid isolation and general lack of curb appeal, unfortunately doesn't remain entirely undisturbed. Despite the growing collection of stone garden statues dotting the landscape, which you'd think would serve as a fairly effective keep-out sign, you still get visitors. Unwelcome visitors. These aren't friendly neighbors popping by with a casserole, though. Given your dietary issues, that might be for the best. No, these are the ancient world's equivalent of extreme tourists, thrill seekers, and glory hounds aspiring heroes, foolish adventurers, and the occasional deeply misguided individual who heard there was a woman of unique appearance living out this way and decided to investigate. Honestly, the audacity? The early encounters are probably confusing, both for you and for them. You're still grappling with your curse, trying to live a life of minimal accidental stonings. Suddenly, some fellow in a bronze breastplate and a slightly too small helmet, brandishing a spear that's seen better days, bursts into your cave shouting something about glory and ridding the world of your evil. Your first instinct is probably not aggression, but a startled, "Oh dear, please don't look at me." Yeah, followed by the inevitable thunk as he becomes the newest addition to your statuary. It's terribly inconvenient. Now you have to find a new spot for him, and they're surprisingly heavy to drag around, especially when you're trying to avoid eye contact with his newly petrified and rather judgmental face. These encounters add a new layer of stress to your already overburdened existence. You're not just a monster by appearance, you're now actively, if often unintentionally, fulfilling the role. Each new stone hero reinforces your terrifying reputation. You become a known quantity, a challenge. Have you heard about Medusa turns you to stone with a look bit of a fixer-upper of a lair, but a great notch on the old spear, if you can manage it? You can almost hear the chatter in the distant taverns where such ill-advised quests are born over too much watered-down wine. You didn't ask for this fame. You were aiming for reclusive weirdo who occasionally talks to her snake hair, not must-slay monster of the month. You might try to reason with them in the split second before they either charge or freeze. Look, buddy, I'm really not up for this today. My snakes have a collective migraine, and I think I chipped a scale. Can we reschedule perhaps for the 12th of never? But heroic types are notoriously bad listeners, especially when they're pumped full of adrenaline and dreams of epic poems being written in their honor. They see a monster, they want to fight. They rarely consider that the monster might just be having a very bad eternity and wishes everyone would leave her alone with her misery and her increasingly crowded rock garden. Remember that time you accidentally petrified a really promising patch of edible moss? These guys are just as disruptive. The vigilance required is exhausting. You can never truly relax. Every creak of a stone, every distant bird call, and every rustle in the thorny bushes outside your cave could signal the approach of another glory seeker. Sleep, when it comes, is shallow and easily disturbed. Your snake hair perhaps acts as an early warning system. Their hiss is growing agitated, their heads lifting to taste the air for intruders. It's like having a dozen tiny, scaly, and highly opinionated guard dogs permanently attached to your head. Useful, maybe, but not exactly conducive to a good night's rest. All right, Vinny the Viper, what is it this time? Another lost sheep or an actual hero with a death wish? A quirky tidbit, the concept of kleos, fame or glory, often won in battle, was incredibly important to ancient Greek heroes. Defeating a fearsome monster like you would be a massive boost to a hero's kleos, ensuring their name lived on in song and story. So, in a way, these intruders are not just trying to kill you, they're trying to achieve a form of immortality at your expense. It's a rather selfish motivation when you think about it from your perspective. You're just trying to exist, and they're trying to use your head as a career stepping stone. Literally. As more adventurers meet their stony end, the path to your lair becomes even more grotesque and, paradoxically, more alluring to a certain type of individual. It's a gauntlet of petrified predecessors, a testament to your power, and thus, a greater prize for whoever might finally defeat you. You're basically creating your own increasingly difficult video game level, and the local heroes are all trying to beat the high score. The stress is immense, and you didn't even install the game. A mainstream historical fact for you. Many Greek myths involve heroes undertaking perilous journeys to confront monsters in their lairs, often at the behest of a king or as part of a quest to prove their worth. These narratives reinforce societal values of courage, strength, and the triumph of order represented by the hero over chaos represented by the monster. You, of course, are firmly in the chaos category, whether you like it or not. Historians still argue whether the figure of the hero in Greek mythology is a purely aspirational archetype, representing ideal masculine virtues, or if there's also a critique embedded in these stories. Perhaps of excessive pride hubris or the often destructive nature of the pursuit of fame. From your vantage point in the cave, surrounded by the stony consequences of their hubris, you're probably leaning towards the critique interpretation. These heroes often seem less like paragons of virtue and more like particularly stubborn and heavily armed pests. Each encounter, even if it ends in your accidental victory, chips away at what little peace you might have found. It's a constant reminder of your curse, your isolation, and the fact that the outside world views you as nothing more than a monstrous obstacle to be overcome. You find yourself longing for a truly deserted island, one not marked on any hero's map, where the only thing trying to make a name for itself is the tide? The constant parade of unwelcome spear-wielding guests is seriously cramping your style, or what's left of it. A vacation seems less like a luxury and more like a matter of urgent self-preservation. You just want to be left alone to contemplate the existential angst of having snakes for hair, without someone trying to lop your head off every other Tuesday. If the parade of annoying, self-proclaimed heroes wasn't enough to deal with, You also have the unique pleasure of sharing your remote, drafty lair with your sisters, Stheno and Uriele. Now, family can be a comfort in trying times, a source of support and understanding, or they can be an additional source of stress, irritation, and passive-aggressive comments about whose turn it is to clear out the petrified field mice. Given that your sisters are immortal gorgons, born to the hissing hair and terrifying gaze lifestyle, their ability to empathize with your recent traumatic career change from priestess to public menace might be limited. Imagine the domestic bliss. 3 gorgons, 2 of whom have had eternity to perfect their monstrous eccentricities. And you, the newcomer, still trying to figure out the basics of not accidentally turning your reflection into a permanent art installation. Stheno, whose name means strong or forceful, is probably the bossy one, always insisting her way of arranging the cave stalactites is superior, or critiquing your hissing technique. No, no, Medusa. It's more from the diaphragm. Dear, you sound like a leaky wineskin. Uriele, far roaming or wide leaping, might be the restless one, always complaining about the lack of stimulating scenery or the declining quality of heroes stupid enough to wander by. Honestly, the caliber of adventurers these days. Barely a decent scream out of that last one before he went all granite. They are immortal, remember? You are not. While Athena's curse made you a monster, it didn't grant you their eternal lifespan. This fundamental difference likely colors all your interactions. They have an eternity to bicker, to reminisce about that particularly juicy hero from the last century, to watch empires rise and fall from the comfort of their gloomy cave. You, however, have a decidedly more limited engagement. This might make them dismissive of your anxieties. Oh, you're worried about Perseus, sweetie. We've seen dozens of Perseuses. They're a dime a dozen. Now, that Theseus back in the day, he had some interesting shield work before he became part of the south-facing rockery. Your impending doom is just another Tuesday for them. Daily life with Stheno and Uriel is likely a masterclass in passive aggression and ancient resentments. Who left the Gorgon equivalent of a dirty dish in the sink, a half-petrified, half-eaten, whatever? Whose turn is it to scare off the local wolves that are getting too close? Do you argue about whose snakes are shedding more, creating a particularly unpleasant carpet of tiny, discarded serpent skins in the main chamber? Remember those minor irritations of living with fellow temple attendants? Like someone using up all the good olive oil amplify that by a factor of immortal monster with a side of venomous coiffure? And you're starting to get the picture. It's like a reality TV show from Hades' Gorgon Shore. Their reaction to your transformation, when you first arrived, was probably less than sympathetic. Perhaps a flicker of surprise. Oh, Athena finally got to you too. Did she took her long enough? Followed by a pragmatic assessment of how your presence would affect their long-established routine. Maybe they even resent you a little. You were the pretty one, the human one, and now you're crashing their exclusive monster club, bringing all your mortal baggage and existential angst with you. Honestly, Medusa, do you have to be so dramatic about the whole turning people to stone thing we just get on with it? A quirky tidbit from some less common myths, there are occasionally hints of other Gorgon-like figures or related monstrous families in Greek mythology. It suggests a whole subterranean, chthonic society of beings that the Olympian world preferred to ignore or demonize. Your sisters might have their own social circle, their own gossip from the underworld, further isolating you if you're not privy to the latest news from the Stygian depths. Did you hear what Hecate wore to the last underworld solstice party? Simply divine. The problem of shared space is also magnified. Caves, even large ones, can feel pretty small when you're cohabiting with 2 immortal beings who have very strong opinions about, say, the optimal level of dampness. And their housekeeping standards, after millennia, might be unique. No, Stheno, we are not keeping that petrified hero as a hat stand. He clashes with the lichen. Your attempts to bring a little order, a faint echo of your former temple neatness, are probably met with derision or outright sabotage. They've been living this way for ages. Who are you, the newbie monster, to suggest improvements? A mainstream historical fact. Family dynamics, including sibling rivalries and intergenerational conflicts, are a recurring theme in Greek mythology and drama, from Zeus and his brothers overthrowing their father Cronus to the tragic family sagas of Oedipus or Agamemnon. The Greeks were clearly fascinated by the complexities and often destructive nature of familial bonds. Your Gorgon household, in its own monstrous way, is just another chapter in this long tradition of dysfunctional mythological families. Historians still argue whether the portrayal of monstrous families or groups like the Gorgons, the Grey, or the Harpies was meant to suggest that monstrosity could be a shared or inherited trait, perhaps reflecting ancient ideas about lineage and corruption, or if it simply provided a richer narrative tapestry for heroic encounters. For you, it means your personal nightmare now has a live-in audience, and they're not always supportive. Sometimes, the most terrifying thing in the cave isn't the darkness or the heroes outside, but the prospect of another passive-aggressive comment from Euryale about your hissing being off-key. The constant presence of your immortal sisters, with their endless history and their jaded perspective on everything, only serves to heighten your own sense of despair and your desperate longing for escape. A vacation for one, please, far, far away from judgmental siblings who've had literally forever to work on their eye-rolling skills. You almost missed the quiet judgment of the temple statues. At least they didn't offer unsolicited advice on snake management. The bickering, the shared gloom, the complete lack of personal space. It's enough to make anyone yearn for a solitary hermitage on a remote, sister-free island. Living with Stheno and Uriel doesn't just bring the everyday annoyances of shared monstrous living, it throws your own unique, cursed situation into even starker relief. They are immortal. They were, according to most traditions, born as Gorgons. This is their natural state, their eternal reality. You, however, are a cursed mortal. You had a life before, a human life, full of sensations, emotions, and experiences that they can never truly understand. And, crucially, you have an end. While your current existence feels like an unending nightmare, you are not like them, doomed to face an infinite expanse of cavernous gloom and bad hair days. This difference creates a profound, echoing chasm between you. Imagine the long, dark hours in the cave. Your sisters might engage in activities honed over millennia of boredom. Perhaps they have intricate, centuries-long arguments about philosophical points so obscure only immortal monsters could care. Maybe they practice their terrifying glares on unsuspecting cave spiders, or have hissing contests. My dears, Stheno might begin, her voice like grinding stones. Do you recall that delightful little earthquake back in the second millennium BCE? The one that reshaped the coastline near Crete? Those were the days? The mortals were so much more pliable then. Uriele might chime in with a sigh that stirs the dust. Nothing like that these days. It's all bronze armor and predictable battle cries. So, déclassé, their immortality means they perceive time differently. Decades, centuries, are mere blinks to them. Your anxieties about the latest hero prophesied to come for your head, your grief for your lost mortal life, these are from their eternal perspective. Fleeting concerns. Still moping about that temple business. Medusa. Honestly, it's been what, a few years. Try a few millennia of this damp, and then we can talk. Their attempts at comfort, if they even make any, are likely to be clumsy and unhelpful, filtered through an eternity of monstrous detachment. They simply cannot grasp the raw, fresh horror of your transformation, or the looming shadow of your eventual demise. Remember how a grandparent might struggle with new technology? It's that, but with existential dread and the crushing weight of immortality. This difference is a constant, unspoken presence. You see their casual acceptance of their state, it's all they've ever known. They don't mourn a lost beauty or a stolen life. They are the terror, the ancient chthonic power. You are a shattered human, forcibly reshaped into their image. A poor imitation, a temporary fixture in their endless existence. This can lead to a profound sense of alienation, even from the only beings who remotely resemble you. You are of them, but not truly one of them. A quirky tidbit in some philosophical schools of ancient Greece. particularly those influenced by Plato. Immortality of the soul was a key concept, but physical immortality for beings like your sisters was often associated with the monstrous or the divine, setting them apart from the natural human cycle of life and death. Their endlessness is part of their otherness. You, tragically, retain your mortal soul trapped within a monstrous but still finite form. You might find yourself watching them, studying their movements, their interactions, trying to understand this eternal existence they inhabit. Do they feel boredom, or has time lost all meaning? Do they have memories stretching back to the dawn of the world? To times when different gods held sway, their conversation, if you could call them that, might be peppered with references to events and beings so ancient they make the Olympian gods seem like recent upstarts. Remember when old Ophion and Eurynomy ruled from Olympus? Before Cronus got ambitious, Stheno might muse and Euryale would nod, her snakes rustling thoughtfully. Simpler times, fewer heroes. You are a footnote in their epic endless saga, a mainstream historical fact. The Greek concept of the afterlife varied, but for most mortals, it was a shadowy, uninviting realm in Hades. Heroes might achieve a kind of immortality through eternal fame. Kleos, but true, conscious. Physical immortality was generally reserved for the gods and a few other exceptional beings, often monstrous ones. This makes your sister's state particularly unique and sets them apart from almost everyone, including you. Historians still argue about the origins of the Gorgon myth, with some suggesting they might be descended from ancient Near Eastern or Minoan protective deities or demonic figures, whose attributes were later transformed and demonized by the Hellenic Greeks. If your sisters are remnants of such ancient powers, their immortality connects them to a primordial layer of belief, a time before the neat Olympian pantheon was established. They are echoes from a deeper, darker, and more chaotic past. Your own story, being a cursed human, is a much more recent Olympian-era tragedy. The echoes in your shared cavernous home amplify this sense of difference. Their ancient sighs, their pronouncements born of eons reverberate around you. Your own fears, your own grief, your own relatively recent pain can feel small and insignificant in the face of their timeless monstrosity. It's a deeply lonely feeling. Even surrounded by snake family, you are adrift. This constant confrontation with their endlessness, juxtaposed with your own cursed but finite timeline, only intensifies your longing for an escape, for a place where you are not defined by your curse or by the terrifying, eternal example of your sisters. A vacation where the only echoes are the gentle lapping of waves, not the weary pronouncements of beings who've seen too much and cared too little for far too long. You start to wonder if their version of a vacation is just finding a slightly different cave for a few centuries. It's not exactly inspiring your own travel plans. As if your personal struggles with snake hair management, dietary restrictions, unwelcome heroic visitors, and immortal, overbearing sisters weren't enough. Your reputation begins to take on a life of its own. The whispers about the terrifying Gorgon in her remote lair, the one who turns men to stone with a glance, start to spread, and like all stories passed from person to person, yours gets embellished, exaggerated, and generally blown out of all reasonable proportion. You are becoming a legend, and not in a good way, not in the founded a library and was really good at pottery kind of way. More in the people scream and run away at the mere mention of your name kind of way. Initially, the tales might be somewhat accurate, if terrifying enough. There's a woman with snakes for hair, priestess of Athena. She was cursed for reasons, lives in a cave out west. Look at her. You're a statue. Best avoided. But human in nature, especially when it comes to scary stories told around a flickering campfire, tends to amplify the monstrous. Soon, you're not just snake-haired, you have giant boar tusks, hands of brass, and your hissing can be heard for miles. Your petrifying gaze doesn't just turn people to stone, it boils their blood, shatters their bones, and makes their crops fail for 3 generations. You become a scapegoat for anything and everything that goes wrong. Stubbed toe Medusa's fault. Bad olive harvest. Definitely Medusa. Your neighbor's goat wandered off. You probably petrified it and are now using it as a particularly uninspiring paperweight. This growing legend has several unfortunate consequences. Firstly, it makes your already profound isolation even more absolute. Any slim chance of someone stumbling upon you with an open mind, a very, very slim chance, admittedly, is now gone. You are prejudged, pre-condemned by your fearsome reputation. No one is going to offer you a cup of wine and a sympathetic ear when they believe you breakfast on lost travelers and use their bones to pick your teeth. Or your snake's teeth, if they have them. Remember that nice, quiet anonymity you sometimes craved as a beautiful priestess? Well, you've achieved the exact opposite infamous notoriety. It's like going viral for all the wrong reasons, but with more screaming and significantly more statuary. Secondly, and more dangerously, your escalating reputation makes you an even bigger target. The more terrifying the monster, the greater the glory for the hero who defeats it. You're no longer just a local menace, you're becoming a continental-level threat. A creature of mythic proportions. This attracts a higher caliber of hero, more determined, better equipped, perhaps even divinely aided. The clumsy adventurers who just stumbled upon you are gradually replaced by serious, dedicated monster slayers who have specifically sought you out, armed with research, however inaccurate, and a grim determination to add your head to their trophy collection. The stakes are getting higher, and the pressure is mounting. A quirky tidbit: the ancient Greeks had a thriving oral storytelling tradition. Epics like the Iliad and Odyssey were recited for centuries before being written down, and local myths and legends would have been constantly evolving in their retelling. Your story is being shaped by countless storytellers, each adding their own little flourish, their own terrifying detail, until the Medusa of legend bears only a passing resemblance to the cursed, miserable being you actually are. You're basically being crowdsourced into ultimate monstrosity. You might even hear echoes of your own legend, perhaps from a captured and quickly petrified traveler who was foolish enough to be boasting about the fearsome Medusa he was seeking. Or maybe your sisters, with their ancient connections. Pick up on the latest rumors from the mortal world. Darling, Stheno might say, not without a hint of monstrous pride. They're saying your hisses can curdle milk in the next village now. Quite the achievement for a newbie. It's a strange, disembodying experience to hear your own horrifying myth being constructed. To know that the world sees you as this colossal engine of destruction, while you're just trying to find a comfortable rock to lean against and avoid accidentally fossilizing a passing bird. A mainstream historical fact. The power of myth and legend in ancient Greece was immense, shaping their understanding of the world, their gods, their history, and their values. Stories of monsters and heroes weren't just entertainment. They were educational, cautionary, and foundational to their cultural identity. You have become a key player in this mythological landscape, a symbol of terror whose defeat will signify a triumph of order and heroism. No pressure. Historians still argue about the process of myth-making itself. How much of it was organic storytelling evolution? How much was deliberate propagandistic shaping by ruling elites or religious cults? And how much was influenced by cross-cultural exchange with neighboring civilizations? Your story, like many others, is likely a complex blend of these factors. A narrative snowball rolling downhill, gathering more fear and more monstrous attributes with every rotation. The weight of this legend is immense. It's a cloak of terror that you can never take off. It defines you in the eyes of the world, and perhaps, over time, it even begins to shape how you see yourself. Is there any trace of the gentle priestess left beneath the layers of monstrous reputation, or are you becoming the creature they whisper about in hushed, fearful tones? The vacation you dream of is not just an escape from your physical prison, but from the prison of your own legend. You long for a place where your name doesn't immediately conjure images of snakes and stone, where you could, just for a little while, be anonymous again. But the whispers are becoming screams, and the screams are attracting more and more attention. Your quiet retirement plan of gloomy cave, minimal interaction, is being seriously jeopardized by your own burgeoning, and entirely unwanted, celebrity status in the monster world. You feel the soft brush of Hermes' winged sandals against your Well, Perseus's ankles. As you guide him ever closer to that fated spot at the edge of the known world, remember those Hyperboreans and their lovely, if somewhat drafty hospitality. Their parting gifts, the cabesus, that special, rather unassuming bag for a rather specific, horrifying purpose, and Hades' cap of invisibility, feel strangely heavy now. Not in physical weight, but with the sheer audacity of this entire errand. You adjust the strap of Athena's polished bronze shield on your arm, its surface gleaming even in the dim, gray light that filters through the perpetual twilight cloaking this land of the Gorgons. This isn't your average backpacking trip through Europe. Is it, Noah? This has potentially turned into a very permanent garden gnome, written all over it. The air grows colder, heavier, pressing in on you. There's a faint acrid smell like old metal and something else. Something uniquely unsettling, almost reptilian. You can hear the distant, mournful crash of waves against unseen cliffs, a constant sighing reminder of Poseidon's domain. The very god whose actions, in a way, set all of this in motion. A little ironic, you think, that the sound of the sea is the soundtrack to Medusa's lonely, bitter end. You find Perseus pausing, his hand instinctively going to the hilt of the adamantine sickle. That razor-sharp loner from Hermes? He's probably just making sure it's still there. A bit like checking for your phone and wallet before heading into a particularly sketchy neighborhood. He wouldn't want to get all this way only to realize he'd left the primary snake-decapitating tool back at the last Olympian Airbnb. Athena's voice? Or perhaps just the memory of her firm instructions. Echoes in your mind. Do not look at her directly. Use the shield. Her gaze is her power, and her power is absolute. Absolute. Not a lot of wiggle room in that word. You take a deep breath, or rather, you feel Perseus take one, the air surprisingly thin and biting. The entrance to the cave, or whatever passes for Medusa's lair, isn't grand. No ominous portcullis or fiery moat. It's more like a wound in the rock face. A dark, uninviting gash that seems to swallow the already faint light. You can just make out the beginnings of her collection inside. Those eerily lifelike statues. Remember them. Yes, there they are. Frozen in various poses of shock, terror, or futile aggression. Each one a cautionary tale. A silent testament to a fatal moment of eye contact. Not exactly the welcome mat you'd hope for. Perseus slips the cap of Hades onto his head. You don't feel a thing, of course, because you're just along for the ride. But you can imagine the sudden, disconcerting sensation of the world perceiving you as nothing. A ghost. It's the ultimate cheat code. Really, this divine invisibility. He adjusts the shield again, angling it so he can see behind him. Or rather, to the side and slightly behind. It's awkward, like trying to parallel park using only the tiny vanity mirror on the sun visor. One wrong move, one accidental direct glance, and you're just another exhibit in Medusa's open-air gallery of regret. Slowly, cautiously, you guide Perseus into the gloom. The only sounds now are the drip, drip, drip of water from unseen stalactites. The faint skittering of something small and unseen, best not to dwell on that. And the soft, almost inaudible whisper of the winged sandals barely touching the gritty cave floor. The air is thick with the smell of ozone and that strange, metallic, snaky scent. Stronger now. It's the kind of place that probably gets 0 stars on TripAdvisor, largely due to the petrification issue. And then you see her, or rather, you see her reflection in the polished bronze. Athena was right, even in the wavering, indirect image. There's a terrible, captivating beauty to Medusa. Scholars still debate whether Medusa was asleep or awake when Perseus arrived, with some ancient depictions suggesting a slumbering vulnerability, while others imply she was ever watchful. Tonight, in your shared vision, her reflection shows her reclining on a flat, dark slab of rock, almost like a crude altar. Her eyes are closed. Thank the gods. The snakes that form her hair are moving, though a slow, coiling, restless mass of green and black, occasionally emitting soft, dry hisses that echo faintly in the vast chamber. They seem to pick up on something, A subtle shift in the air, perhaps, their little forked tongues tasting the unseen disturbance. Perseus freezes. His heart, you can feel it, is hammering like a forge. One of Medusa's sisters, Stheno or Euryale, is nowhere to be seen, or at least not reflected in the shield's limited view. Perhaps they're out hunting, or just elsewhere in this charming abode. This is the moment, the culmination of a king's rash promise, a goddess's anger, and a long, perilous journey. You wonder if Perseus recalls the mainstream historical fact that Gorgonia, amulets depicting a Gorgon's head, were widely used in ancient Greece, placed on doors, shields, and even ovens to ward off evil. It's a bit ironic that he's here to create the ultimate Gorgonian, the source of all those protective charms, by an act of profound violence. He inches closer, each step a universe of tension. The shield shows the sleeping face, the serpentine halo. The snakes are becoming more agitated now, a few of them lifting their heads, their unblinking eyes, if snakes can be said to have unblinking eyes in quite that way, seeming to peer blindly into the space where Perseus stands. Invisible. It's a testament to Hades' headgear that they don't immediately raise a ruckus. Even divine party tricks have their perks. This is it. He raises the adamantine sickle. The metal, forged in the heart of some celestial furnace, seems to absorb the faint light, giving off no reflection of its own. It's a tool made for one specific, grim purpose. He can't afford to hesitate, can't afford a second thought. The instructions were clear, swift, decisive. You recall a quirky or fringe tidbit from some obscure text suggesting that the blood from Medusa's left side was a potent, instant poison, while blood from her right side possessed miraculous healing properties, even capable of raising the dead? Perseus probably isn't too concerned with an autopsy right now. But it's an interesting little detail, isn't it? The duality of her very essence, even in death. With a grunt that is swallowed by the oppressive silence of the cave and the magical silence of his invisibility. Perseus swings. It's over in an instant. A sickeningly efficient sound, quickly muffled. The head, reflected in the shield, separates from the body. There's no grand struggle, no desperate defense from Medusa herself. She was asleep, or at least unaware in that final second. It's a stark reminder of the one-sided nature of this divine hit job. He had all the tools, all the help, all the surprise. She had a really bad reputation and a lonely existence. The snakes on her severed head seemed to writhe for a moment longer. A final, confused, angry spasm before slowly becoming still, their jewel-like eyes dulling. Perseus, still invisible, stumbles back a step, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He quickly, without looking directly, scoops the head into the kibisis. The bag, you recall, was specially designed to contain its power, to prevent accidental petrification. Good thinking. Hyperboreans. You wouldn't want that rolling around in your carry-on, turning fellow passengers into stone. Talk about an awkward flight. And then, from the severed neck, a truly bizarre occurrence. Even by mythological standards. Not a torrent of blood, not immediately, but something else. Two beings, fully formed, spring forth. One is a magnificent winged horse, pure white, who shakes his mane and, with a powerful beat of his nascent wings, begins to ascend towards the cave mouth, a symbol of poetic inspiration taking flight. This is Pegasus. The other is a young warrior, Chrysaor, grasping a golden sword, his face set in a grim, determined expression. They are, the myths say, the children of Poseidon and Medusa, conceived in that terrible moment in Athena's temple, and now, bizarrely, born from her death. It's a very Greek way of handling childbirth. Isn't it maximum drama? Questionable biology? Perseus doesn't linger. He can probably hear the stirring of the other Gorgons now. Stheno and Euryale, awakened by the commotion or the sudden absence of their sister's familiar, hissing aura. Their shrieks of rage and grief begin to echo from deeper within the cave system, promising a very unpleasant pursuit. Time to make a swift exit. He adjusts the kibisis, making sure the deadly contents are secure. The mirrored shield showdown, as it might be dubbed in some epic poem, is complete. It was less of a showdown and more of a divinely sanctioned assassination, but, well, a win is a win, especially when the alternative is becoming a permanent garden feature. And you're just relieved you didn't have to look. You feel Perseus's urgent need for speed as the enraged shrieks of Stheno and Euryale, Medusa's less famous but presumably equally unattractive sisters, fill the cavern behind you. Honestly, you can't blame them for being a bit miffed. Discovering your sibling has been abruptly and unceremoniously decapitated by an invisible hero with flying shoes would put a damper on anyone's day. It's probably not covered in most family bereavement pamphlets. Using those winged sandals to their fullest, Perseus, and by extension, you are now zipping away from that rather gloomy island, the cabesus containing its terrible trophy bumping gently against his hip. He's probably thinking that Athena and Hermes better have a very good dry cleaning service for these borrowed divine accessories after this little escapade. The Gorgon sisters, bless their persistent, monstrous hearts, are in hot pursuit. They can't see him, thanks to Hades' cap, but they can likely sense the disturbance. Or perhaps they're just following the faint, lingering scent of hero who just murdered our sister. They are described as having brazen claws and powerful wings themselves, so it's not exactly a leisurely stroll in the park for Perseus. More like a high-speed, inter-island chase scene from an ancient action movie, only with more shrieking and a distinct lack of cool explosions. You can almost hear the whir of the sandals as they pump furiously, carrying you over desolate landscapes and churning seas. This is probably where having a flying horse like Pegasus, who so dramatically burst forth a few moments ago, would have been a real upgrade in getaway vehicles. His first major stop, or rather forced interaction, on this post-decapitation tour is with the Titan Atlas. You remember Atlas, the one holding up the sky big job. Lots of responsibility, probably terrible for the posture. As the story goes, Perseus, perhaps feeling a bit cheeky after his recent success, or maybe just tired and wanting a place to rest without being hassled, requests hospitality from the sky-bearing Titan. Atlas, who apparently wasn't in the mood for visitors and had heard some prophecy about a son of Zeus coming to steal his golden apples. A different hero? Different story, but Titans aren't always great with details. Rudely refuses. Big mistake. Huge. Perseus. Not one to take rejection lightly, especially when he's carrying the ultimate no you card. Simply unveils Medusa's head. Care to reconsider, you can imagine him saying, or perhaps something more heroically terse. One glimpse is all it takes. The mighty Titan Atlas is instantly transformed into a vast mountain range, forever gazing at the sky he once held. It's a rather extreme way to win an argument, turning someone into a geographical feature, but effective. The Atlas Mountains in North Africa. Yep, that's him. Still doing his job in a stony, immobile sort of way. One has to wonder if he ever regretted not just offering Perseus a cup of tea and a biscuit. As you continue your journey with Perseus, soaring over the vast Libyan desert, you might notice, if you were looking down, little drops of blood from the cabesus, still potent, falling onto the sands below. This brings us to a rather quirky or fringe tidbit legend, says these drops of Medusa's blood spontaneously transformed into venomous snakes, populating the desert with all manner of deadly vipers. It's a grim sort of generative power, a final, unintentional gift from Medusa to the world, echoing the bizarre birth of Pegasus and Chrysaor. So, if you ever find yourself in Libya surrounded by an alarming number of snakes, you now know who to thank, or rather, whose circulatory system. Your aerial tour eventually brings you to the shores of Ethiopia, which in ancient geography often meant a region south of Egypt, typically along the coast of the Red Sea, or further south in Africa, not modern-day Ethiopia exclusively. And here, you encounter a scene of classic damsel in distress proportions. Princess Andromeda, chained to a rock by the sea, awaiting a rather unpleasant blind date with Cetus, a monstrous sea creature sent by an angry Poseidon him again, to punish her mother, Queen Cassiopeia, for boasting that she was more beautiful than the Nereids. You know how it is with divine beauty pageants. The judging is harsh, and the penalties for hubris are usually cetacean. Andromeda is understandably distressed. What with the waves crashing at her feet and the distinct smell of monster breath in the air? Perseus, ever the hero and perhaps noticing that Andromeda is quite striking, even when chained to a rock and facing imminent doom, swoops in. Cetus, a creature of immense size and ferocity, with tusks and scales and all the usual sea monster accoutrements, rises from the waves. It's not impressed by the flying shoes or the shiny sword. This requires something with a bit more stopping power. So, Perseus, after probably a bit of dramatic dialogue and maybe a quick, "Close your eyes, darling, this could get ugly," carefully averts his own gaze and whips out Medusa's head from the cabesus. He holds it aloft, a stony glare contest between a dead gorgon and a very live sea monster. Cetus, meet Medusa. Medusa. Cetus. The effect is, as you might expect, instantaneous. The great beast stiffens, its roar cut short, and it becomes a massive gnarled rock formation in the bay, a permanent warning against offending sea nymphs. Andromeda is saved, her parents are suitably grateful, and wedding bells are soon in the air. Perseus gets the girl, the glory, and presumably a very nice dowry. Medusa's head not just for titans anymore, also great for marine pest control. But the drama isn't over at the wedding feast, because no Greek myth is complete without a disastrous wedding feast. Andromeda's uncle, Phineus, to whom she had previously been promised, shows up with a band of armed followers, ready to dispute Perseus's claim. It's all very dramatic. Swords are drawn. Threats are made. Phineus, clearly, hadn't received the memo about Perseus's rather unique party trick. After a bit of standard wedding brawl fighting, Perseus, likely sighing at the sheer predictability of it all, decides to expedite the conflict resolution process. He warns his new friends to look away, then once again reveals Medusa's head. The hall quickly fills with a new set of very still, very surprised-looking statues. The precise number of Polydectes' followers turned to stone alongside him is a matter of some minor, though entertainingly macabre, scholarly contention. And one might say the same for Phineus's unfortunate wedding crashers. It certainly put an end to the arguments, though it probably made the cleanup crew's job a lot more complicated. "Honey, where should we put Uncle Phineus? He doesn't quite go with the drapes anymore." Finally, his adventures with Andromeda temporarily concluded. Perseus, with you still tagging along in spirit, makes his way back to the island of Seriphos. Remember King Polydectes, the one who sent him on this impossible quest in the first place, hoping to get rid of him so he could pressure Perseus's mother, Danae, into marriage? Well, Polydectes is rather surprised to see Perseus return, and even more surprised when Perseus claims to have fulfilled the quest. The king, surrounded by his sycophantic courtiers, scoffs, demanding proof. "Show us this Gorgon's head. If you truly have it," he sneers. "Oh, Polydectes, you just had to ask." "Didn't you, Perseus?" with a grim sense of satisfaction. Obliges, he tells Danae and his few loyal friends to shield their eyes. And then, for the last time under his care, presents Medusa's head. The king and his cronies get a very good, very direct, and very final look. Their mockery turns to shock, then to stone. Another room redecorated with instant human statues. That'll teach them to doubt a hero with a divine support system. His mother safe, the tyrant punished. Perseus has one last duty regarding his deadly carry-on. He doesn't keep the head. It's far too dangerous, too powerful for any mortal to wield indefinitely. Instead, he travels to the temple of Athena, the goddess who guided him and provided the all-important shield. He presents Medusa's head to her, a spoil of war, a token of a completed quest. Athena, in her wisdom, accepts it. This is where we tie into a mainstream historical fact. She places the Gorgon's head onto her own shield, the aegis, or sometimes onto her breastplate, also called the aegis. The aegis, often depicted as a goatskin shield fringed with snakes and bearing the Gorgonian, was one of Athena's most potent symbols, representing her protective power and her ability to terrify her enemies. Medusa's face, once a curse upon herself, now becomes a divine apotropaic symbol, meant to ward off evil and strike fear into the hearts of Athena's foes. Classicists still ponder the exact symbolic transition of the Gorgon head from a purely monstrous emblem to a powerful protective symbol on Athena's aegis. But its efficacy in art and belief was undeniable. And so, Medusa's head, after a rather eventful post-mortem career that saw it function as a weapon, a geological formation tool, a monster deterrent, and a rather effective party stopper, finally finds its resting place. From a priestess, to a monster, to a trophy, and finally, to a divine emblem. Quite the journey. Wouldn't you say her power, once a source of terror and isolation for her, is now harnessed, integrated into the Olympian order, a chilling reminder of what happens when you cross a goddess, or when a hero is really, really well equipped? You have to admit, for a disembodied head, she certainly stayed busy. So, there you have it. Medusa's head, now an official accessory on Athena's divine battle shield. The Aegis, quite the promotion from lonely island dweller to a key piece in a goddess's arsenal, though one imagines the original owner wasn't exactly consulted about the career change. You've journeyed with Perseus, seen him use that potent, petrifying gaze to overcome titans, sea monsters, and uppity wedding crashers. Her head, at least, got to see a bit more of the world after her demise, even if it was mostly from the rather grim perspective of turning people into decorative stonework. You have to wonder if it accrued any Olympian frequent flyer miles, or if Athena ever had to polish off seagull droppings from those stony snakes. Probably not. Divine shields are likely self-cleaning. But let's rewind, past the heroic deeds and the post-mortem adventures of her severed head. Let's drift back to Medusa herself, the woman, the priestess. Before she became the monster everyone loves to slay in their epic poems. Can you even imagine the sheer, unadulterated unfairness of her existence? It's like her entire life was a cosmic prank gone terribly, terribly wrong. One minute you're a devout priestess, tending the sacred flame in Athena's temple, probably quite proud of your role, your mind filled with prayers and rituals. You're living a life of chastity and service, dedicated to the virgin goddess of wisdom. You're doing everything right, ticking all the celestial boxes. Then Poseidon, god of the sea, earthquakes, and apparently a complete inability to respect sacred boundaries or consent, takes an unwelcome interest. And because he's a god and she's a mortal, her vows, her sanctity, her personhood mean absolutely nothing in the face of his desires. He assaults her, not just anywhere, but within the very temple of Athena, a sacrilege of monumental proportions, and who bears the brunt of the divine fury that follows not Poseidon. Oh no, he gets to swim off, presumably without so much as a heavenly slap on the wrist. Instead, it's Medusa who faces Athena's wrath. The goddess, enraged by the defilement of her sacred space, doesn't punish her powerful uncle Poseidon. That would be messy, politically complicated among the Olympians. No, she takes it all out on the victim. And what a punishment it was. Not a stern lecture, not a period of penance. Athena, in her infinite wisdom and rather terrifying sense of justice, transforms Medusa. Her beautiful hair, perhaps once admired, becomes a writhing nest of venomous snakes. Her skin takes on a ghastly hue. Scales, perhaps. Fangs sprout. And, the crowning glory of this divine makeover, her gaze becomes so potent, so horrifying, that any living creature who meets her eyes is instantly turned to stone. You can just picture the celestial HR department for the transgression of being assaulted in a holy place. You are hereby sentenced to become a horrifying monster with lethal bad breath and a hairstyle that will ensure you never ever get a second date. Have a nice eternity. So, she's exiled, driven to a remote island. Her very presence a source of terror. Imagine the loneliness. Her only companions are her sisters, Stheno and Euryale, who were apparently also Gorgon's sources vary on whether they were always monstrous or cursed alongside Medusa. But either way, not exactly the sort of company for lighthearted chats and afternoon tea. Her days are filled with the hissing of her own hair, the oppressive silence of her lair, and the chilling sight of those statues, the unfortunate sailors, the arrogant warriors, the merely curious, all frozen in their last moments. Remember that rather grim garden of regret she cultivated. Not by choice, mind you, as it was more like an involuntary art installation, a testament to her cursed power. Every statue a reminder of what she'd become, of the impossibility of connection. She couldn't even get a pet dog without it becoming a permanent fixture. Then come the heroes, one after another, presumably drawn by the challenge, the glory, the sheer audacity of facing the dreaded Gorgon. It must have been like an endless stream of unsolicited DMs, each one ending with another stony addition to her collection. She wasn't just a monster to them. She was a quest item, a trophy to be won. There was no understanding, no empathy, just the desire to conquer. You can almost hear her sighing, the snakes on her head rustling in weary exasperation. Oh, another one. Don't you people have hobbies? Read a scroll, learn pottery? Anything? And finally, Perseus arrives. Not just any hero, but one equipped with an arsenal of divine cheat codes, winged sandals for unmatched speed, Hades' cap of invisibility for the ultimate stealth approach, an adamantine sickle sharp enough to slice through fate itself, and Athena's polished shield to avoid that deadly gaze. Talk about an unfair fight. Medusa, whether she was asleep or simply caught unawares, never really stood a chance. It wasn't a battle, it was an execution. And for what? For being the victim of a god's lust and another goddess's misplaced rage? Her life was essentially one long divine character assassination, followed by a literal one. This brings us to the core of it. Medusa really needed a vacation. Not just a weekend break, but a proper, extended, all-inclusive getaway to somewhere far, far away from gods, heroes, and anyone with a reflective surface. Can you picture her trying to book it? Yes, I'd like a secluded villa, preferably on a very remote, uninhabited island. No mirrors, please. And can you ensure the staff are all, well, perhaps blindfolded or statues already? Just a thought. She'd probably want a spa package, a deep, descaling treatment, a good conditioner for the snakes they must have gotten terribly dry and frizzy in that damp cave. Maybe some anger management sessions, though who could blame her for being a tad irritable? Perhaps a support group monsters unjustly maligned by the Olympian public relations machine? The ancient Greeks had a strong concept of miasma, a kind of ritual pollution or defilement that could arise from sacrilege, bloodshed, or other serious transgressions. It was believed that miasma could infect individuals, families, and even entire cities, requiring purification rituals. Medusa, through no fault of her own, became a nexus of miasma. The desecration of Athena's temple clung to her, transformed her, and isolated her. Her monstrous form and deadly power could be seen as the ultimate, visible manifestation of this uncleansable pollution. She was, in essence, a walking, hissing embodiment of a sacred boundary violated, a divine order disrupted. Interestingly, some more modern, quirky, or fringe interpretations, particularly within feminist readings of mythology, reevaluate Medusa. They see her not just as a monster, but perhaps as a symbol of female rage against patriarchal violence. Her terrifying appearance a form of defense, a way of saying no more. Her petrifying gaze, in this light, becomes a power to stop aggressors in their tracks, a weaponized form of female agency in a world dominated by male gods and heroes. It's a fascinating lens, suggesting her story might be more than just a simple tale of a monster slain. Whether Medusa's story serves primarily as a cautionary tale against hubris, though it's hard to see her original hubris, a commentary on divine injustice, or a complex exploration of victimhood, trauma, and perhaps even unwilling power, is a topic that continues to fuel discussion among mythologists and classical scholars. But stripped of all the epic trappings, the heroic grandstanding, and the divine machinations, it's the story of someone who was dealt an incredibly bad hand, played it out in horrifying isolation, and met a tragic end, only for her suffering to be co-opted as a weapon and then a symbol. So, as you drift off, think of Medusa, not just as the snake-haired monster, but as the woman who endured the unthinkable, who became a terrifying legend, and who, more than anyone in the Greek mythological roster, truly deeply and profoundly deserved a very, very long vacation, somewhere warm, quiet, and blissfully hero-free. She needed a break from being the stuff of nightmares, a chance to just be, a chance that, sadly, never came. Her story is a stark reminder that sometimes, even in the grand, sweeping narratives of gods and heroes, the most resonant tales are those of profound, personal tragedy, of a life that became a living curse. And now, as the tale of Medusa, her trials and her truly terrible luck gently fades. Allow your mind to soften, to let go of the day's sharp edges. The images of ancient Greece, of gleaming shields and shadowy lairs, begin to recede, like the tide pulling away from a quiet shore. There are no more heroes to follow, no more monsters to fear, only the soft embrace of approaching slumber. Let the gentle cadence of the story become a lullaby, each word a soft footfall leading you further into tranquility. Feel the weight of your own body, comfortable and still, a welcome contrast to the endless, restless movement of ancient quests and divine dramas. Your breathing is slow and even, a calm rhythm in the quiet of your space. The darkness behind your eyelids is a welcoming void, a peaceful expanse where thoughts can dissolve like mist in the morning sun. There's nothing left to analyze, nothing to solve, only the gentle descent into deep, restorative rest. The world outside, with all its demands and its clamor, can wait. For now, this time is yours. A quiet sanctuary for your mind to replenish. Let any lingering thoughts of snaky hair or stony gazes transform into abstract patterns, fading into the peaceful darkness. You are safe, you are comfortable, and you are drifting, drifting towards a sweet and silent sleep.